After taking a massive trip down memory lane, my sister and I have finished watching Yu-Gi-Oh! GX Season 1. We're going to be talking about that today. We're going to be breaking down the entirety of Season 1, talking about what I like, anything I didn't like. We're going to get into all of it for you today. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I'm your guy with many YouTube channels. So, this has always been a very, very nostalgic thing throughout my life is both Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. The reason we ended up getting into this is because we wanted to show, like, we had my daughter over, my daughter and I were visiting my sister, and she's 9 months old, but we were like, okay, what did we like when we were kids? We were talking about, like, Sonic X. We tried showing her Sonic X, and then we just kind of, like, went down the nostalgic rabbit hole, and here I was rewatching Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, and now I plan on doing Season 2 and 3 just because I thought it'd be fun to not only re-experience that, because I haven't watched this since I was, like, actually a little kid in school. Like, it's got to be, like, what, 2006, 2005, 2004, something along those lines? Like, I'm 27 years old right now, so this is a huge trip down memory lane for me, and I really, really enjoyed it. I loved, like, the different slice of life thing, and I would argue for you, too, that this is better than the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Regardless, let's talk about the entire story, okay? I'm excited for this. So, we have the opening sequence. We have the opening story where Jaden, our main character, is running to the Duel Academy, and we all know the story, right? I'm not going to explain everything for you where it's like, oh, they're going to an academy where you duel instead of actually learn. He bumps into Yugi, and I think this is a very, very cool way to start off the series with him bumping into Yugi. Yugi ends up giving him his Winged Karibo card, so you kind of have the thing in common between the two main characters. Now Jaden ends up having his Winged Karibo card, ends up saving the day a little bit. He ends up getting to school, and I gotta say before we actually get into it, I absolutely adored Jaden's character. And this is something that I didn't realize because when I was a kid, I actually admired Jaden. I admired his attitude. Like, he was laid back, he was cool, he was chill. As I've grown up, something that I've gotten really, really, really into is martial arts and specifically sparring. I'm going to be honest with you guys, like, I'm just a guy who likes to fight. I find the adrenaline rush incredible. I love just proving myself against people perhaps more capable than me. I am just built weird, and I know how that might sound. It might sound barbaric, but I'm somebody who really, really enjoys combat and really likes to actually fight. And what really interested me, because again, I haven't watched this since I was a little kid, I think, or at least I wonder, if I ended up modeling a little bit of my personality off of Jaden, because while I was watching this, and while I was watching Jaden go through all of his duels, I was kind of sitting back and going, okay, this is weirdly my approach to fighting, where no matter what it is, if I'm outmatched or if I want to just prove myself, I'm sitting back and I'm having fun. Like, it's something that, and there's a couple other partners that we've had over the years where that kind of have the same mentality as me, where it's like, we could just beat the crap out of each other. We high five after and feel like, that was awesome, you know? Thank you so much for that. Even like the fights where I end up losing, I end up having an absolute blast. And I know it's weird because it's an actual fist fight, but I legitimately have the exact same outlook as I have with that from how Jaden ends up viewing dueling, if you can actually picture my attitude towards that. I wonder if I actually just ended up like that, or Jaden ended up influencing how I developed a little bit while growing up. And that's really crazy to say, and I didn't think about it my entire life until I just recently revisited this old series, because this ended up being a big part of my life. Like, as a kid, I was into Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, beyond pretty well anything that I could be into, okay? So, enough of that. I was just fascinated by that, and I really think that even compared to the movies and TV today, I think Jaden's a pretty good guy to have a main character if somebody wants to admire somebody, an attitude like Jaden. But anyways, let's get back into it, okay? Jaden arrives at his exams a little bit too late, and this is where we have the big duel with Crowler. I love Crowler as a character. We're introduced to Jaden and his kind of like love for dueling attitude. It's a very, very cool battle. I don't think there's gonna be a lot of duels over here where I necessarily break down like what actually happened in the duel, but Jaden ended up getting the one-up on Crowler. He ended up summoning the Flame Wingman, using the Skyscraper combo, and the music, guys. The music is so nostalgic. I can't even, like, it's going to sound so stupid if I do it, but it's like, like, probably sounded so cringe coming through the microphone right now, but I got just as hyped listening to that again. Like, man, it was a huge nostalgia trip for me revisiting this, man. And I'm so excited to get into season 2 and 3. Like, legitimately, I'm going to be watching these, but regardless, the music was on point. It really captures the fun of the duel, and I loved the different kind of like slice of life as it was. It was a huge, huge jump compared to what we've had in the original Yu-Gi-Oh, and it worked. Very risky, but it ended up working. So Jaden ends up defeating Crowler, the big boss, the big mean teacher, the very capable duelist, and he ends up getting into the academy that he wanted to get into. Crowler, because he's butthurt, ended up putting Jaden into the room with Slifer Red, which is the not necessarily dropouts, but like horrible students end up getting put in like the worst duelers. So this is where he meets Cyrus and he meets Chumlee. Cyrus is okay. I hate Chumlee. Like, oh, delicious grilled cheese. Like, I didn't even find that funny when I was a kid. Okay, Jaden was awesome. I hated Chumlee. I'm glad that he ended up like, I don't remember when he ended up taking off, or no, he didn't take off this season. I remember him taking off. I know we'd have to go through the story a little bit more, but regardless, the only other thing that happens in the second episode is we're introduced to Chaz. I love Chaz. Hilarious. And dude, they did not light it. Like, I forgot, like, this is like so early 2000s where they were just like straight up calling each other fat. And something that I also forgot was when I was a kid, we used to use creamed as an insult. I don't remember exactly the context of it, but I remember hearing it where something like Jaden said to Chaz, like, oh, Chaz, you just got creamed. I'm like, oh my God, we actually used to say that. And now it's so disgusting. It was just weird hearing that, of course, for like a 4Kids show, but he ends up dueling Chaz. I didn't get to finish the battle. We're introduced to Alexis, to the love interest of Jaden, and Chaz is really fun. He's your typical antagonist where he's like very, very arrogant, Slifer Slacker. Like, they're calling, like, the name calling this season was hilarious. Like, Slifer Sludge, Slifer Slacker. Like, and there's so much more that's not coming to me right now, but it's just like, it's wholesome. It's a very fun show. We then end up getting into the episode where Crowler is like obsessed with getting Jaden kicked out of school, and Crowler himself is hilarious too. He ends up putting a fake love letter from Alexis to Jaden. Cyrus ends up getting it, and I particularly remember enjoying this episode when I was a kid. I found it really funny. Plus, it was really funny watching like how horrible Crowler was just because he's butthurt that he lost a duel. And he reminds me of like Sonic X's version of Eggman. And speaking of Sonic though, I didn't realize how many of the same voices that they've had in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, because I know one of Alexis's friends, and I noticed this right away, was Chris from Sonic X. And I'm like, oh my God, that sounds strange. And it also kind of like still at the same time sounds like a girl. And Atticus, as we get into that, Atticus is Sonic's voice. I'm like, okay, weird. Before we move on to the actual like kind of solid piece of story throughout the season, we have another episode where Jaden and Chaz end up rematching, and Chaz has all of these brand new cards. And again, duels with Jaden, duels with Chaz, they're always a lot of fun. And I gotta say, like, another thing that Yu-Gi-Oh! GX did very well is so many of these characters are supremely likable. Like, the only one that I can think of off the top of my head right now is Chumlee. I hate the dude. I hate him. But you also had these one-off characters, like, shockingly, I didn't like Chumlee's dad either. But regardless, we are introduced to the abandoned dorm. We are introduced to the abandoned dorm, and this is where we figure out where, we didn't know at this time, but Atticus, Alexis's brother, ended up disappearing. We end up getting a little bit of a shadow game. There wasn't really anything to take a look at there, but I wasn't sure. Well, I mean, as a kid, I wasn't sure at the time if this was going to get a little bit more serious and if we got like the fun school things out of the way and they were just going to get into straight into shadow games. But they went from really serious to really stupid, and then combining the serious with the stupid. Sorry if you could just see a little bit of a lag on my screen there, but they did a good job really mixing it up and getting serious. And Jaden, of course, just laughing his way through everything, and that made the serious moments with Jaden. And now that I'm thinking about it, his character development through all of the rest of the seasons that we're going to be talking about, which we're not going to be talking about season 4 because I didn't watch season 4, and hate me all you want, I don't like watching things that aren't English. That's just me personally, okay? So I like the character development that Jaden is going to go through, but regardless, not a ton comes from this. We just end up learning that Alexis has a brother that ended up just disappearing for some reason. In between that, we have another episode, and after actually going through like a straight up shadow game, which I'd have to watch it again. There was a lot to break down with this entire season. I don't remember if they knew it was an actual shadow game, but regardless, like the spirits pulled them into an actual shadow game. Regardless, Crowler was like, you guys were out too late, you Slifer slime. Like, just ended them talking about them getting expelled. And I love the Chancellor, like the bickering between him and Crowler was always really funny. So he's like, you have to win a tag duel. And at this time, Cyrus wasn't a capable duelist at all. So they bring in those guys, and I don't remember their names, the Gate Guardian guys from the original series. And that's a really nice callback, bringing back that tag team. And it made for a really fun duel. Like, there's a lot of duels here that I wish that I could break down for you, but what is there really to say? Like, oh my God, Jaden did this, he summoned this, did that. Like, I personally don't think that that would make for a very good review, but I enjoyed the duel. And after that, we are introduced to we've seen him, but we are actually introduced to Zane a little bit, Cyrus's brother. Zane is introduced as a very, very arrogant and condescending person. He ended up telling Cyrus in the harshest lesson in the entire world, and could have phrased it any other way, talking about Cyrus not being able to use Power Bond very well. But when we're first introduced to him, he is the best duelist ever. He's undefeated. Jaden, of course, naturally wants to take him on. And he doesn't like that he's disrespecting from Cyrus, and Cyrus isn't a very capable duelist because of Zane's words on him. Cyrus should grow up a little bit, but that's part of development, right? Zane is supposed to take care of him. He's his younger brother, and Zane, at the end of the day, always had his best interests, but didn't go about it the right way. And this is where we see Jaden lose. And I like the fact that we actually see Jaden lose, because while he is a great duelist, while he's one of the best in the entire school, he's not ready for the level of somebody like Zane yet. We're introduced to the Cyber Dragon deck. Zane floors the dude. And you know what's crazy? I know that all of these decks would be very, very cluttered with all the cards that they had, but Jaden's deck should solo, like, everybody. Like, it's crazy that he keeps getting the Cyber Dragon, and of course, as time's gone on, the Cyber Dragon deck proved to be very, very powerful, but at that time, no, nobody was running Cyber Dragons, man. After that, there's not really a ton to break down. We have a few, I would imagine, are filler episodes, because you have the duel between Chumlee and Chumlee's dad, which I didn't know until later on in my life that the hot sauce was supposed to be alcohol. It's just funny looking back knowing that information. Of course, we also have those couple episodes with Jaden dueling the monkey. There's nothing to break down there, man. It was just episodes that I personally didn't enjoy all that much. And now that I'm thinking about it, there were a couple filler episodes, besides maybe with the duel between Chaz and Bastion. That was pretty fun. Chaz unfortunately losing yet again. I wish that Chaz won more duels. And I know that we get into the whole North Academy thing and he wins all of these duels, but I wish when it like really mattered, Chaz would have won a couple more. But I understand like he's supposed to be the guy you want to lose, but as my humor has developed and I've grown up, I kind of want to see Chaz succeed in life. But other than that, we also have the tennis episode, just kind of simping over Alexis again. There's a couple more meaningless duels until we end up reaching the actual duel. And again, it's a little bit of a callback, which was nice to see. Yugi's deck was being brought upon for everybody to take a look at. And then you have the copycat character. I don't even remember his name. Shocker. Like, he ended up using Yugi's deck and imitating Yugi. And it was kind of fun. Everybody liked watching these old cards come about. And we all know that Jaden should absolutely wipe the floor with anything in Yugi's deck whatsoever, but it didn't end up that way. They were like looking at it going, oh my god, this is Yugi's deck. What are we supposed to do? And meanwhile, he's summoning like Gazelle of the Mythical Beast, or I can't remember the exact name of it. Sorry, like Gazelle, King of the Mythical Beast, and Baphomet, things like that. And I'm like, seriously? And you're going up against things like Flame Wingman, Shining Flare Wingman, all of that great stuff, but they end up making it competitive because you have to save the integrity of the first show, right? We also have that episode with Blair, nothing to really note there. Blair had a crush on Zane, had a crush on Jaden, wanted to, and I don't remember if she ends up coming back, because for some reason I'm remembering something to do with her with Viper, but I could just be messing it up with it. Maybe it's Marcel. I don't know, regardless, it doesn't really matter. But other than that, we have the face-off with North Academy that's to be planned, and to choose two students, they end up having Jaden and Bastion face off, which is a pretty good duel. Bastion is like the over-calculated math, intelligent guy, and it's funny seeing, like, you gotta remember, like, these are all kids too. And you have Bastion, somebody who's phrased to be like, or presented to be so intelligent, so calculated, and no matter what, you can't beat Heart. Jaden Yuki better than everybody. But in the meantime, we come to the episode that I honestly kind of really enjoyed. The character's name, I believe, is Belowski. It's the duel he had on the roof with the kid that is just supposedly high. I don't know why. Like, just talking about, like, oh, yeah, we're so chill, man. I remember seeing this when I was a kid and being like just looking at them thinking they're chill and not supposed to be actual stoners. I oddly just enjoyed this episode. There's nothing to note there. You have the Moki Moki monster that was kind of just making everybody chill. I don't know what it was. I just really liked this episode. I thought it was funny, and I remember, the problem is, I remember watching so many of these when I was a kid, and I don't look at this, like, analytically and going, okay, this is structured good, it was good storytelling. It's like, I so remember enjoying this as a kid, man. We're just chill. Now, another thing that I actually did like about the first season was the story with Chaz and his brothers, because Chaz ended up escaping on sea all the way in the ocean to getting over to North Academy, somehow surviving all of that, but he needs to put together a new deck. He floors everybody at North Academy and ends up actually becoming that representative to take on Jaden, who is the new representative of Duel Academy, to take them on in a duel. Another thing that was funny is we didn't know why not the principals, what did they call them? Headmaster? I don't remember what they called them, but regardless, the people in charge of everything. Chancellor, that's what it was. Chancellor, sorry. Chancellor Shepard and the Chancellor from North Academy were so fired up, and the reason that they cared was because of Dorothy, man. I actually kind of like this. These old heads kind of sipping over this other old character and everybody being grossed out by it. This wouldn't happen nowadays, man. You would be looking at that like, oh my god, that's horrible. Shaming. She's beautiful the way she's built, like crazy. Maybe that's why I feel so nostalgic, because you don't get a ton of this anymore. But regardless, the other duel between Jaden and Chaz was really, really awesome. It was everything that we hoped it to be. Chaz had a completely brand new deck, a better deck, because what was he fighting the first time with Chthonian Soldier? Like, it's funny watching everybody's characters develop too. Plus, Chaz was also introduced to the Ojamas. I love the Ojamas. They're hilarious. They are perfect for a character like Chaz, somebody who is so stuck up, so to himself, and so annoyed by characters like the Ojamas, but you have the unconditional love of the Ojamas just like constantly bothering him. But then he kind of bonds with them, but doesn't exactly want to admit it because they help him out in duels. He secretly enjoys the company, and you kind of see another side to Chaz. Another thing was you have Chaz's brothers, right? Chaz's brothers wants to take over the entire world. I can't remember what it was. They wanted to control something about money, something about television. I don't remember what the three were, and I'm sorry, but the third one was dueling, and that was Chaz's responsibility because the other two were taken care of. And I liked the character development from Chaz. One of the reasons why he's so stuck up, so on the outside hard, is because Jaden ends up walking by to Chaz in the bathroom, like kind of kicking himself, like, you can't lose, you're worth it. And like Chaz is actually having like a crisis to himself, and Jaden wants to help out with that. And Chaz is just insulting him the entire time. So I thought it was all really well done. I like that extra look into Chaz that we got, made him a little bit more human, but also a little bit more understanding about why he's a jerk. But just interacting with Chaz, the Ojamas, and the personality of Jaden always made for a really good time, and the duel was really well structured as well. And the other thing that I loved about it was because of Chaz's 3-month absence, he was supposed to go... abscess, I said. Chaz had a 3-month-long abscess. Anyways, he was supposed to be at school, so he's relegated back to a Slifer Red. Not a Slifer Slum, not a Slifer Scumbag. Like, it's so funny. And he had so many more insults like that where I was kind of like, it actually made me chuckle. But then, like, all of them joking around with the Chaz It Up was also introduced too. I didn't mention that. It's just really, really nice to watch. That in comparison with the music that Yugioh GX chooses to use makes for a very, very wholesome experience. And I can't believe it took me this long in my life to actually revisit one of my favorite childhood experiences ever. The other thing that we end up watching is the episode of the Gravekeeper cards, and arguably, like, maybe the Gravekeepers would actually be the deck that should floor everybody, but they went on a field trip. Chumley doesn't want to walk. Like, oh my god, maybe I'd walk if there were grilled cheese at the top of the volcano. Delicious! I hate him. I hate him. Every single time he comments, whether it's a duel, whether it's they're going for a WALK, I have to spell out my dogs right at my feet. I hate his existence, man. He's not funny and takes me out of scene. Like, every time he talks, like, if it's one of those guys in real life you would look at and go, shut up, Chumley. Like, you know, my god. Anyways, Jaden fought a Gravekeeper deck. He won. But now as we head towards, I don't want to say, probably like around the midpoint of the season, we are finally introduced to the big, not the big baddie, but like the big problem or the big climax of the story. And this is the 7 or the 6 Shadow Riders. Every main character, Alexis, Jaden, Chaz, all of them are given some spirit keys that they need to guard, because if they are challenged and defeated in a duel, then they will get the spirit key. It's not like actually stealing it. You have to win it in the challenge. You have to win it in the duel, classic Yu-Gi-Oh style. And a lot of times, I don't remember if it was required for it to be a Shadow game. Regardless, Shadow games end up coming about. And if the Shadow Riders ended up getting these sacred or these spirit keys, then they would unlock the tools to the sacred beasts. They ended up being very, very anticlimactic, but we're going to get there because this is supposed to be presented as the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX's version of the God cards. They didn't have the aura. Again, we're going to get into it, okay? We're going to get into it. But right now, they're hyping it up to be like the big, worst cards. If anybody gets their hand on them, they'll be completely undefeatable. And the first person that has to duel actually is Jaden, which you can so tell as Atticus, but I don't remember now if I would have been able to tell when I was a kid. Regardless, Atticus, and it takes me out of it a little bit hearing Sonic's voice too. Like, all right, like just like Sonic being hyped up, just like a little bit of a lower tone, like when Dark Sonic ended up coming about, but he's still kind of joking around. Anyways, got to see some Red Eyes. He ends up defeating Atticus, and we figure out that, oh my god, it's Alexis's long-lost brother. We don't get a ton from Atticus at this point, but in the meantime, like, they kind of keep rolling through the Shadow Riders, because now the vampire and Camilla, I don't remember Camilla, so whatever her name was, she was probably my favorite out of the Shadow Riders because she was actually a little bit vicious. She was in it to take people's souls, right? Everybody else kind of had like a redeeming quality, at least to like some extent, not every character, but I like that she was actually vicious. And I also liked the character development that we saw from Crowler at this point, because he actually stood up for his students. And he actually had like a really, I remembered what I wanted to say about Crowler. The guy, another thing you wouldn't be able to joke about now, and I didn't know when I was a kid, but Crowler's a dude, right? But even guys like Chaz were like, oh, really? Do you think that guy's a dude? Like, I'm like, oh my God, you can't say any of this anymore. So YouTube, I'm very grateful to be on this platform. Not funny. Yu-Gi-Oh! GX should be deleted off the entirety of the planet. Thank you. I'm very grateful to be here. Thank you, YouTube. But everything Crowler was ended up pretty great. But yeah, I loved the moment that he had here. Standing up for his students, actually being a little bit heroic. And when he ended up losing to Camula, he ended up getting his soul trapped into a doll. And him protecting his students was actually a really nice development to all of this. So after that, Jaden's still recovering. He's not ready to duel yet. So Zane's the one that comes in. And of course, Zane can wipe the floor with Camula, but he ends up having to forfeit the duel because she ends up threatening to kill Cyrus or trap his soul into the Shadow Realm forever. In turn, Zane ends up getting his own soul trapped, and they have to figure out how to beat this vampire and how to beat Camula. And I still don't know if she was actually a vampire or not, or if she was just a human. I don't know sometimes if these characters are cosplaying, but regardless, she is a Shadow Rider. So in recovery, and this is where I thought it was very strange that Yu-Gi-Oh! GX did every once in a while, is because we move on to a pretty wholesome episode where they're chilling in the hot springs, but then they just fall into the dual spirit world where Karibo ended up bringing them, and Jaden has to fight Kaiba Man. I thought this was cool. You got to see the Blue Eyes White Dragons, and this basically was Kaiba. It's just like a nice Easter egg-ish moment, but at the same time, it's actually character development for Jaden because he ends up getting defeated, but he gets his confidence back. He's ready to duel, and he's ready to take on Camula. Long story short, Jaden takes on Camula, and Atticus ended up giving him some pendant that would protect him against like any Shadow Realm tricks. He ends up defeating her. Crowler and Zane saved the day. Now, we move on again to a little bit of a more wholesome episode, because now we are back to, well, I mean, I wouldn't say wholesome, but now we're back to Chaz's brothers of Duel Academy, and Chaz still facing the issues with his brother. Jaden trying to stick up for him a little bit, which isn't necessarily working out, but this is where Chaz actually ends up bonding with the Ojamas more, because they end up challenging him because they want Chaz out of the school. Chaz has to make a deck with monsters. I think it was under 500 attack points, but regardless, Chaz schools his brother no matter all of the rare cards that he ends up using. Chaz wins the game. We see the Ojamas actually come to fruition now, and it's very cool to see. And Chaz, you can tell, bonding just a little bit more with them. But now we move on to a couple points that I actually didn't really like. We had the whole submarine episode with the legendary fisherman and just someone trying to build their own duel academy. I don't remember exactly what that was, but Jaden just had another side duel. I didn't really care too much about it, to be honest with you. And shockingly, I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion or not, but I didn't like the duels against Tanya as well. I don't know why. I didn't like Bastion falling head over heels for her, and I didn't like the souls battling each other that she went through with Jaden, and Tanya just being this really cool Amazon woman. Like, I don't know. I didn't care for it, honestly. Like, they were duels. There was another Shadow Rider, but she didn't really seem evil. Yeah, it's tough. It's weird. I didn't, to be honest with you, I'm not going to really spend time talking about it. But then we actually have the Shadow Riders unfortunately take a little bit in a back seat in kind of, what do you call it, like, their value a little bit, because you have Tanya, who didn't really feel like a Shadow Rider. Then we have the Ancient Pharaoh, who's another Shadow Rider, who has just had all of their decks fixed. So once you beat a Shadow Rider, and like all these people want to just like capture your soul and mummify you, or whatever the Pharaoh wanted to do, it's just, hey, get your game on. All right, we just call me if you want a rematch, and everything's like all good. It was just a little bit strange to me, but we continue on. There is another duel with the Shadow Rider. They end up getting the job done, and then we're brought into the, I think I just talked about cosplay, but regardless, it was a very wholesome episode where they talk about their card crushes, and you guys gotta remember when you were kids, man, who was your card crush? Like, of course, there's been some good ones over the years, but I remember, like, back in the day, Injection Fairy Lily. I was never personally hyped up on this, but people really liked the Harpy Ladies and the Harpy Lady Sisters. Vampire Vamp, I don't know when that came out, but that card had no business being as beautiful as it was. I can't really think of anything else, but of course, everybody liked Dark Magician Girl, right? So, yeah, talk about the card crushes. Bastion, as if he just didn't love a tiger. Just like, oh my god, Cyrus, this is ridiculous. And then the Dark Magician Girl ends up actually coming in and cosplaying, right? And ends up dueling. Cyrus is calling the game with Chaz. Cyrus and Chaz calling the game. Peak comedy, by the way. Absolute peak comedy. And it was another one of those, like, really, really wholesome episodes. I like the fact that Cyrus actually got to see a dual spirit. Jaden saw it afterwards, like, all right, Cyrus, she didn't visit you, but I just saw her. And then it was just wholesome, man. Cyrus ended up being happy that he got his first kiss. Dark Magician Girl ended up showing him the affection that he really, really desired. We also have the duel with Pierre, which there's nothing to note, just another episode of people simping over Alexa. At some point, we have the same thing with, Alexis. And at some point, Chaz has the same thing. But other than that, we're brought to, and I don't remember the name that he used, but Professor Banner was the final Shadow Rider, and shockingly, he was not evil at the end of the day. He ended up using a remove from play deck, which is a deck that I tried to build so many times when I was a kid, but it didn't work out. And now it finally has support, right? I loved the idea of having decks like with the Golden Homunculus, like characters or your cards being removed from play. I loved it. Macrocosmos was goated back in the day, but I could never string it together. I couldn't play like Banner. But anyways, Jaden ends up having a very, very tough duel, and it turns out Banner decided to be a Shadow Rider so he can prep Jaden for the whole final battle. And then after that, sorry, I have my notes on screen right now. After that is when Chaz realizes that he's in love with Alexis. Atticus ends up helping him out, and it's just like, again, one of those really wholesome episodes. We just went through everything that we went through with Banner, people getting kidnapped, all of that, and how serious the Sacred Beast situation is too. I love you, Alexis. I love you. But after that, we get back to serious business, and this is the rise of the Sacred Beast. So it turns out the Spirit Keys meant nothing, and what they really needed was dual energy. And having a whole thing like this with the Shadow Riders was a perfect way to get all the dual energy, and Jaden had more dual energy than everybody in existence. So this is what the new character wanted to take on Jaden for. He wanted to take him on. He already had the Sacred Beast because he had the dual energy, and what was the point? Now that I think about it, what was the point? Was there a point to it? But I actually thought it was cool the way that the pillars kind of spawned, the light coming about. It actually did a good job at really capturing the scene and setting it up. But the problem was, once we actually ended up seeing these Sacred Beasts, they did not hit the mark, man. They didn't hit the mark for me at all. And to be honest with you, I didn't really enjoy the duel as much as I enjoyed even a duel with Chaz and Alexis. There was some fun banter there. GX got a lot better as time's gone on when it comes to really dealing with serious duels, and there were some ones here, but it didn't hit the mark, man, because they're really advertising this as the new God cards, right? The GX versions of God cards, but there was some aura that was there when you summoned Slifer, Ra, Obelisk. I didn't feel that at all, one little bit. It was, okay, these monsters are beatable, they're powerful, but they're beatable. The deck was phenomenal. Now we have Fallen Paradise, and that deck is actually viable in itself if you can actually pick it up, and it has some support now, but Jaden should wipe the floor with this every single time. Of course, it just draws 3 continuous traps over and over again, but that's Yu-Gi-Oh! Way. I'm not here to break that down at all, but I was just disappointed with, I just feel like Jaden had more ways to just beat them. Skyscraper Flaming Wing combo, easy. You could take down Raphael, Lord of the Phantasms. And even when they summon, the monsters have a really, really cool design, but maybe the music they missed the part on. I hope you guys understand what I'm talking about. The original Yu-Gi-Oh! When Obelisk the Tormentor was summoned, you could feel the presence. But that also could be a problem with the decks being so much more powerful in GX because nobody had decks that powerful in Yu-Gi-Oh! In the original Yu-Gi-Oh! When someone summoned a God card, there was little you could do to fight against it. But now in GX, Cyber End Dragon can take care of Uriah in just a second, assuming that you don't have all the cards in the world in the graveyard, right? Perhaps that was it. The finale of this didn't hit the mark for me. Okay, it was still fun. I remember them back in the day. That, as a kid, that made me really, really want those Sacred Beast cards. And my dad, because he's the best dad in the entire world, got them for me, in an instant. I remember still to this day getting them and how hyped I was. And I could not play with them for the life of me because I had no support. I remember back in the day, actually, the only way that you could really use Haman was combining it with a Crystal Beast deck. Because that was the way that you got your continuous spells without actually just having a completely useless deck. But even then, that didn't really work out. So Jaden ends up defeating the Sacred Beast. The Chancellor ends up swearing that he's going to protect them all for himself, and the Sacred Beast will never see the light of day ever again. I think I remember seeing them again throughout the series, but I don't really recall what it was. Maybe it was Adrian? Is it Adrian? Yeah, Adrian Gecko. All I have to do is just draw my card and say it dramatically. Yes, Adrian Gecko. Sorry, it's truthfully been that long since I've watched this series, but I remember it all, which is crazy to me, okay? Anyways, the season isn't over yet because we have and actually the only time that I've really enjoyed myself with Chum-Li, he gets a job over at Industrial Illusions where he can work for Pegasus. His card designs are great, but he has to be let go, but he's a failing student, so Crowler ends up saying, hey, beat me in a duel, we're good. They have a really fun duel. Crowler ends up defeating him, and Crowler has a great moment. And again, Crowler, for as funny as he is, as wacky as he is, as mean as he is, I love these moments from him. The ones where he actually ends up shaking Chumley's hand after the duel and ends up saying, hey, it's about proving your worth. It's not about beating me in the duel, and you proved that you are a very capable duelist. They shake hands and then congratulates Chumley and looks forward to what he has going on for him. I'm low-key so happy that Chumley isn't around anymore, but that that ended up being a really, really cool moment. So Crowder has been straight up like comedic gold, but at the same time had some really, really respectable moments, and I love the development through these characters that are supposed to be antagonists, like Crowler. I keep saying Crowder for some reason. Crowler and Chaz. Love the development from both of them. But anyways, we move on to the graduation duel. They have to prep for the graduation duel. Zayn ends up choosing Jaden. The rematch is here. Jaden has to get over thinking too hard because he actually ended up losing, but he ends up finding the passion again. And this was a very, very solid duel. I liked that Jaden was in his head a little bit too much. Zayn actually was the one to really like beat him down a little bit and saying, shame, chose Jaden Yuki to face me. I wonder where he is, and Jane didn't really get it. But as time went on, they ended up figuring it out that Jaden ended up with, like, dueling with his heart instead of just using strategy. And it was just pretty back and forth. I liked seeing the Cyber End Dragon over and over again, them going overboard with their power, them drawing the same card at the end. And I love the fact that because Jaden is still developing right now, and it's so cool to see a main character actually lose here and there, I like that he didn't just get the win over Zayn. I liked that it ended up being a draw. He proved that he's on Zayn's equal, and he can very well beat Zayn in a duel. And perhaps if he didn't spend the first half of the duel just kind of like not playing as he would, maybe he would beat Zayn. And you know, at that time, the Elemental Hero should absolutely beat the Cyber Dragon deck, but you get the point. Zayn was undefeatable, and Jaden was the one who ended up making him human. Zayn's taken off, and at the end of the series, or at the end of the season 1, I loved the way it ended with Jaden and Zayn laying on the floor. He made Zayn laugh. That was a beautiful touch. They're both tired. They're both exhausted from their duel. They wish each other congratulations. Zayn says that to Jaden, like, you're going to be the next best duelist. You're here to, I'm passing the torch to you. I'm moving on to bigger and better things. They lay down and they laugh together. Zayn's character broke. Jaden made him laugh. I absolutely loved it. This was an incredible callback to season 1. Absolutely incredible, man. I can't wait. I'm legitimately excited to watch season 2 and 3 because I remember this as I'm watching it, but I can't tell you like what happened in season 2. I can tell you like the Society of Light happened, but Jaden gets Elemental Hero Neos. I don't remember much beyond that. I remember having some funny moments with Chaz. Chaz ended up getting converted into the Society later, something like that. But I don't remember. I remember season 3 very well because that was phenomenal. And I don't know if I've rewatched that when I was a kid, but regardless, man, like, I cannot wait. We are going to be talking about more Yu-Gi-Oh! We're going to get into tier lists. We're going to be talking about all of that. Now, speaking of Yu-Gi-Oh! And anime, all of that sort of stuff, I actually just recently made a video on why people are so turned off by anime and refuse to watch it. If you're interested in checking that out, you can check out this video on screen right now. I would love to have you over there. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. Take care.